Here are some examples of how past performance data can actually sting you on your property investing journey. Now, let's just take a few examples of areas that will help paint the picture really well. Sydney, for example, from 2003 to about 2012, almost 10 years, had some of its worst performing periods during that time. Now, by worst performing, I don't mean massive declines that scare people, and I don't mean, volatility that is coming up and down. I'm talking about flatline. So a flatline period, in my opinion, is probably worse than the ups and downs because, there aren't really any things that you can do. I mean, on the downside, there's actions that some people like to take. On the upside, there's actions that other people like to take, sell, take out equity and so forth. But on the flat side, there's always this anxiousness about when's it coming, what's happening, why aren't things moving, where are they going, what's next. Now, if you looked at that period of 2003 in Sydney to 2012, there was almost 10 years of little to nothing happening. Now, when you're in 2013, if you'd made the decision to go, hey, I'm not going to invest in property in Sydney because it's done nothing for the last 10 years, then you would have arguably missed out on one of the greatest booms in Sydney's property history. Massive results from 2013 to 2016 and in some suburbs up to 2017 mid-year. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that you can't just keep relying on the past to make today's decisions. I'll give you another classic example. There were periods where, for 10 years, many people were saying, over the last 10, Brisbane's done nothing, when's it going to have its time? All these people are saying buying in Queensland. Whereas in 2019, there was some real solid signs of uptick movements and many suburbs that had double-digit growth in Queensland during 2019. Now, when you think of that, there was a new wave of capital growth coming into the picture, and obviously a couple of things slowed it down going into 2020, but using that last 10 years as a result could have hurt you or had you miss out on opportunities during that time. Another classic example are many regional markets like Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo, Launceston, Devonport. Now, if many people had used certain moments in time in the past to explain their performance for them, they would have missed out on some of the strongest capital growth that has occurred across these markets over the last 3 or 4 years. So let's look at it the opposite though. Hey, 2012 to 2016 in Sydney, massive jumps. And you're thinking, everything's going up in Sydney. Big jobs, big city, lots of people moving in, property's going crazy, incomes are good, life is good, can't complain. Well, if you use that motion and all those things that occurred to get into property, then suddenly you would have been met with some of the biggest declines in the property market history for Sydney during 2017 to 19. A massive recovery straight after that for 2019 going into 2020. And all of that volatility would have got you to a pretty much back to zero position. Because a lot of people who've invested in Sydney over the past 3 to 5 years have had little to no movement in their money. They might have invested at certain points, like a down point and the recovery happened, or maybe a high point and it went down and then out slowly coming back up. Different points could have gotten different results. But in summary, even if you saw that boom and used that boom as a mean to get in, you would have been met with different results. So when you're thinking of property investing data, the past will play a picture to show you how things have reacted to events and certain things that are happening in our day-to-day lives and how they come into the picture with property and what policies, bank policies, government policies impact price. You can use the past to paint a picture of why things did X or Y, but you can't use that as a means of going, it's done this over the last 10, it will continue to do this over the next 10. It's not the case at all. So when investing, use past performance to connect dots, but don't use them to judge performance for the next 5 or 10 years. That's when lead indicators come into play, not past performance.